Hi everyone, I'm Nick Olivo, and today we're looking at how to use script cards to automate features for the Beastheart class for D&D 5th edition. Now the Beastheart comes to us from MCDM Productions, and I don't have a relationship with MCDM, I just really love their products. And on the surface, you may think that the Beastheart is a lot like a ranger. It's a nature-based class that's primarily focused on combat. You've got things like animal handling and survival as your skills, but unlike a ranger where you may get, say, a wolf for an animal companion, the Beastheart gets monstrous companions. So you can have companions like owlbears or basilisks or mimics, and there are a bunch more as well. And the Beastheart and their companion have these special maneuvers they can use in combat that are called exploits. Exploits can do things like increase your AC, grant advantage or disadvantage in combat, or increase your movement speed, and there are a bunch of other things that it can do as well. These exploits are fueled by what's called ferocity. So in combat, if a companion isn't incapacitated, their ferocity increases by 1d4 plus the number of hostile creatures within 5 feet of them. As they gain more ferocity, they can use more powerful exploits, but they also become more difficult for the Beastheart to control. And if they generate too much ferocity, they can enter a rampage where they're just as likely to attack one of their allies as they are one of their foes. So today we'll see how to use script cards to automatically generate ferocity when we enter combat and add that ferocity to our character sheet. And then we'll also see how to create exploits that automatically deduct the appropriate amount of ferocity from our character sheet. And that's just going to make it a whole lot easier to track ferocity as our Beastheart goes through combat. So when all is said and done, we'll get a prompt like this one where we can put in the number of adjacent enemies, click submit, and then the script card will automatically generate the appropriate amount of ferocity and add that to our character sheet. And then we'll have some exploits which consume that ferocity and display information over here in the chat. Note that because we're using mods, a pro account will be required in order to do this. Before we dive in, I'd just like to thank Roll20 for sponsoring this video. Alright, so to start things off, we need to install some mods. And the first mod that we need is script cards. This comes to us from the amazing Kurt Jakers. Kurt, thank you so much. This mod is absolutely fantastic. And script cards is going to handle all of the logic and output for our ferocity and exploits. And then we're also going to use another mod called Fetch, which comes to us from Timaw the Metamancer. Fetch will be used in order to retrieve the token IDs of some of the items on the board. We'll talk more about that in just a bit. But once you've got both script cards and Fetch installed in your game, then we're ready to start writing some code. And as you can see here, I've got my trusty Notepad++ window ready to go. And again, the final output is going to look like this, where we have a pop-up that says what's the number of adjacent enemies. So Backpack the Mimic here has 2 methods adjacent to him. We'll click submit, and we can see that we rolled a d4, added the number of adjacent enemies, 1d4 plus 2, which resulted in 3 ferocity total. And if we open up the character sheet, we can see that right here, the companion ferocity value has been set to 3. Okay, cool. So let's write some code to make this happen. First thing we're going to do is come into the Notepad window here. We're going to type in !script to open curly braces and to closing curly braces. That means everything between these curly braces is what's part of the script card. All right, now let's get our title here where we say generate ferocity. That's going to be done with a line like this, title generate ferocity. Easy enough. So now what we want to do is generate the ferocity. And the way that works is we roll a d4 and then we add the number of enemies within 5 feet of our companion. So that's done with a line like this, where we say -- equals, that means we're creating a numeric variable. The numeric variable is going to be called GeneratedFerocity, and the value for that variable is the d4 plus the number of adjacent enemies. So this question mark bit right here, this is just a normal Roll20 prompt. We're going to pop that up. The person will fill in the number of adjacent enemies, we'll add a d4 to that, and store the results here in GeneratedFerocity. Now, when you generate ferocity, you need to make sure that your companion doesn't enter a rampage. So basically, after they roll to increase ferocity, if the companion has 10 ferocity or more, they run the risk of entering a rampage. So what we need to do is take the amount of ferocity that we've just generated, add that to any ferocity that's already on our Beastheart's character sheet, and check to see if that total is 10 or higher. So how do we do that? So in order for us to read information off of our Beastheart's character sheet, we need to get our Beastheart's character ID. That's done with a line like this, where we say --ampersand, Beastheart, and Sorem pipe character ID. So what is this? Under the hood, every character in Roll20 has a unique ID associated with it. If I just run this right now at Sorem character ID, I can see that I get back this alphanumeric string right here that starts with a dash. That is Sorem's character ID. We're going to use this ID in order to refer to Sorem to read information off of his sheet. And specifically, the thing that we want to read off of his sheet is the companion ferocity. And if I hover over this, you can see that behind the scenes, the ferocity is called class_resource. So that's the value I want to read when I'm doing this calculation to figure out the total amount of ferocity that my Beastheart has. So the first thing we're going to do is retrieve that value, and that's going to be done with a line like this. So let's break this line down. -- equals means, again, we're creating a numeric variable called CurrentFerocity. And the value we're setting that to is whatever our class resource is. Now let's talk a little bit about the syntax that you see right here. The way that script cards read information off of a particular character or token or whatever is using its ID. And so the syntax would normally look like this. The open and closing square brackets, and then inside that the star, followed by the character or the token ID, and then a colon, and then the name of the value you want to read, like this, class resource. So what I'm doing here is just using this Beastheart variable that we created on the previous line, rather than referring to the full Sorem character ID. This just makes it a little bit easier to read. So we're saying we're grabbing the Beastheart's class resource, and we're going to store that in the CurrentFerocity variable. So now the next step is to add the CurrentFerocity to the GeneratedFerocity and get a total. And that's going to be done with a line that looks like this, where we say that TotalFerocity equals current plus generated. Now I also want to display the GeneratedFerocity to my player, and that's going to be done with a line that looks like this. So -- plus, and then GeneratedFerocity, this is the label that you see right here, and then the pipe, and then the value that we want to display to the user. So we're using the GeneratedFerocity variable we created earlier, and we're displaying that over here in the card. I also want to do the same thing for the TotalFerocity, and the syntax for that is pretty much the same thing, just we're using a different variable. So now what I want to do is add the amount of ferocity that we just generated to the value that's currently on our character sheet. And that's going to be done with a line like this. So -- A means we're setting the value of an attribute on our character sheet. And specifically, the character we're working with is our Beastheart. The value that we're setting is our class resource, so the companion ferocity. And the value we're setting it to is += GeneratedFerocity. So the += means add this value to whatever is currently in this value. So if we generated 3 and our current companion ferocity is also 3, then 3 + 3 would give us a value of 6. Now, once we've calculated the total amount of ferocity that we have, we need to make sure that we don't have more than 10. If we do have more than 10, then they run the risk of entering a rampage. And basically, the Beastheart can make an animal handling check to try and stop the companion from entering that rampage. And the DC for that check is 5 plus the companion's total amount of ferocity. So the code for that is going to look like this, where we start out with --, which is a conditional statement, and we're looking to see if the total ferocity value is greater than or equal to 10. That's what -GE means, is greater than or equal to. If it is, then we're going to do everything between this open square bracket and this closing square bracket and pipe. And so what do we want to do in here? Well, we want to calculate the DC of the animal handling check, which again is 5 plus the total ferocity that they have. So we can do that with a line that looks like this, where we say WisdomDC is equal to 5 plus the total amount of ferocity that they have. We also want to put a message into the chat telling the player that their companion is at risk of entering a rampage. And that'll be done with a line like this, where we say --+ and then a pipe, and then backpack is at risk of a rampage. I'm going to put this in bold to make it very dramatic. and then we're going to make the wisdom animal handling check of DC, and then the DC that we calculated up here to calm them. Now, let's take this for a spin. I'm going to go ahead and set my companion ferocity up to 9 so that we're guaranteed to get this to trigger. I'm going to copy this code. Let's scoot our character sheet out to the side here, and let's put in our code here, run that, and we're going to say we have 2 adjacent enemies, submit, and there we go. Our generated ferocity was 4. Our total ferocity is 13, so we correctly read the 9 off the character sheet, added the 4 to it, determined that that total is higher than 10, and now we see that Backpack is at risk of a rampage, and we're going to make a wisdom animal handling check DC 18, which is 13 plus 5, so that's good, in order to calm them. Awesome. So this is good, but we can make it better. We're going to put a button in the script card that a player can click to actually make that animal handling check, and that way they don't need to open up their character sheet. They can just click on the button right in chat to make that check. Let's see how. So that can be done with a line that looks like this. We start out with just a plain old text line, and then click to roll animal handling is inside these square brackets. That's going to be the text that appears on the button. But then we've got all this stuff inside parentheses. What are we actually looking at here? All right, let's break it down. If we wanted to run animal handling programmatically, that is, we wanted to do it without clicking on it on our character sheet, what we would say is @ followed by this text right here. So @ Sorem pipe animal underscore handling underscore roll. If I run this right now in chat, you see that it makes the animal handling check and it puts in all of Sorem's appropriate modifiers. Inside of a button, we can't have special characters like the @ sign. So we need to replace them with their corresponding HTML character code, which is what this ampersand #64 is. So under the hood, this translates to the @ sign. But now, what about this exclamation point and then the 13 here? Well, in order for this to work properly, we need to put in an exclamation point, but then this ampersand #13 triggers a return or an enter in Roll20, and that's what's going to fire off this command into the system. So we click the button, it presses enter and calls Sorem's animal handling roll skill. So let's run this. So just paste that in, press enter. Let's say that we're going to do just 2 adjacent enemies again. Okay, we've got 5 more ferocity added to our total, which was 13. Now it's 18. Backpack is at risk of a rampage. The animal handling check is at 23 now. And we got this button, click to roll animal handling, click, and we failed. And now Backpack is in a rampage. So now that we've seen how to generate ferocity, we can use those same concepts to create script cards for our exploits. Let's see how. So let's start with a simple example, this feral reflexes exploit. It costs 2 ferocity, and when we or our companion is hit by an attack, we can use our reaction to increase our AC by 2 against the triggering attack. And so when all is said and done, we're going to have a card that looks like this, where we say feral reflexes, we display the ferocity cost, and we give a description of what it does, and then we're also going to reduce our ferocity by the appropriate amount. So in this case, by 2. And so rather than going line by line, I'm just going to paste in the code block itself and we'll talk through what it's doing. So just like before, we're setting the title of the card. Just like before, we're getting a reference to Sorem's character ID. Something that's new here was we're creating a variable called ferocity cost, and we're setting that equal to 2. And then this left sub, ferocity cost, and then the ferocity cost variable is what's giving us this line right here in the card. The next piece that we do is we retrieve the current ferocity that we have, and again, that's coming from our class resource, just like we saw earlier. And then we've got this conditional, which is checking to see if the amount of ferocity that we currently have is greater than or equal to the amount of ferocity that this ability costs. And if it is, then we display this text in the card, which you see right here. And then this attribute line is reducing the amount of ferocity we have by our ferocity cost. So we would deduct 2 from this number right here. If we don't have enough ferocity, then we put a message in chat saying you don't have enough ferocity to use this ability. So if I click on this button again, we should see the companion ferocity go down to 2. There it goes. Click it again. Now we're at 0. If I try to use it a third time, we get an error saying you do not have enough ferocity to use this ability. Let's look at a slightly more advanced example with Thrash, which costs 4 ferocity. So when your companion hits a large or smaller creature with an attack, you can use your reaction to force them to make a wisdom save, and on a failure they have disadvantage on attack rolls, and attack rolls against them have advantage until the start of your next turn. So when all is said and done, that's going to look like this, and the code for that is going to look like this. And it's very similar to what we saw with feral reflexes. We've got our title, we're retrieving Sorem's character ID. What's new here is we've got another variable called exploit save DC. So this is the DC that the target needs to beat in order to not be thrashed. And that's going to equal 8 plus our Beastheart's proficiency bonus plus our Beastheart's wisdom modifier. So that's going to give us a total of 12, which we can see right here. And then the ferocity cost for this one is 4. Just like before, we've got our ferocity cost being displayed. We've also got the save DC being displayed like I just showed you. Just like before, we're getting our current ferocity and we're checking to see if we have enough ferocity in order to use this ability. We then display the text of that ability and deduct the appropriate amount of ferocity from our character sheet. Now, there are a couple of dozen different exploits available to a Beastheart, and I'm not going to be able to create script cards for all of them during the course of this video, but you can use the ones we've already done as a template for any other exploit that your Beastheart may pick up. But there is one other scenario that I want to cover, and that's what happens when combat ends. When combat ends, the companion regains hit points equal to their ferocity, and their ferocity drops to 0. So let's create a script card for this. And so the code for that's going to look like this. So just like before, we've got our title. I'm taking some liberties here because it's not officially called Ferocious Healing, but I think that sounds cooler. Just like before, we're grabbing Sorem's character ID and putting that in the Beastheart variable, but now we're creating another variable called Companion. And you'll notice that's being set to Backpack, which is his companion, the token ID for Backpack. And you'll notice that here I'm using parentheses rather than squiggle brackets. That's because this line right here is being pulled from the fetch mod that we installed earlier. So fetch allows you to get token IDs based on the character name. You can't do that normally, so that's why we needed fetch in order to do this. Then again, we're retrieving our current ferocity, and we're setting the Beastheart's ferocity to 0 on their character sheet. And then right here, this T line, and I'm going to make this a little bit wider so we can get it all on one line. This is saying take the bar 1 value on Backpack's token, which is his HP, and we're going to increase it by the current ferocity. Now this max bit here is saying don't let the bar 1 value go any higher than the maximum value it allows. So right now, Backpack is maxed out. He has 21 out of 21 HP. If we ran this without the max bit right here, then we would be able to overheal, and Backpack could get up to like 26 out of 21 HP, and that just wouldn't make sense. So the max bit here is preventing us from overhealing the token. Once we've done that, we put a message into the chat saying that Backpack's ferocity drops to 0, and then we're saying that Backpack regains hit points up to his current ferocity. So let's take this for a spin. Let's drop Backpack's HP down to, say, 5. And let's see how much ferocity Sorem has. He has 4 currently, all right? So if we run this right now, we should see Backpack's HP jump up to 9. And then the amount of ferocity that Sorem has on his character sheet will drop to 0. So let's run that. There we go. We see Backpack's HP jumped up to 9. We see that he's regained up to 4 HP. And Sorem currently has 0 ferocity. All right, so let's force this to not overheal. Let's make sure that that max bit is working properly. So I'm going to set the ferocity to something ridiculous like 99. And let's go ahead, we'll minimize this. Let's run the code again. And there we go. Backpack's ferocity drops to 0. He regains up to 99 HP, but he didn't regain 99 hit points. He regained back up to his maximum. So there you have it. That's how you can automate operations for the Beastheart in D&D 5th edition. Just want to give another quick shout out of thanks to Kurt Jagers for some help that he gave me with that max bit at the very end there. Really appreciate that, Kurt. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a like and consider subscribing. And until next time, folks, have a great day.